Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about Legend, the greatest Dungeons and Dragons story of 2023, which is Legends of Vox Machina, Season 2, and we're going to talk about less Riegel, less adult, more D&D. So one of the themes, actually, I'm pretty sure it's on Gizmodo. I was on Gizmodo, and they had an article over there, and it said Legends of Vox Machina really leans in on Season 2 to its D&D heritage, right? And I really appreciated this because, like, the Gizmodo is kind of a mainstream medium. They get almost, and whenever, if you're a dungeon master, or if you're a dungeon sentinel, or if you're a Dungeons and Dragons player, you cringe the moment you hear that the Washington Post or NPR is going to touch a story about Dungeons and Dragons, because their ignorance just like shines on every sentence, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be a mess. They don't know what they're talking about, and it's just going to be a bunch of like ignorant nonsense. And I think, and so Gizmodo was, the thing I appreciated is, one, that they recognize the heritage of Legends of Vox Machina is Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's not Pathfinder, it's not Critical Role, it's Dungeons and Dragons, right? Vox Machina is vapor without Dungeons and Dragons. It's nothing, right? And the OGLers and the OSR and the Orc want to promise you that it would be just the same, right? But the reality is, we know it wouldn't, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, you could take that ingredient out, and everybody's like, I ain't eating that soup without that ingredient, right? Like, so, but but this season, no question, if you look at it, it's way less adult, right? And they really tone down like the dirty jokes, the intimacy, the physical intimacy jokes. It's just, and frankly, it's way less Sam Riegel, right? And honestly, I'm not a fan of Sam Riegel. I think he's one of my least. I really feel like he has Orion Akaba's seat and doesn't deserve it, because Orion Akaba got kicked out of Critical Role, in my humble opinion, for literally the same behavior that Sam Riegel has done more intensely. Like, wow. All right, so that's my humble, and so I really don't like Sam Riegel. Yeah, and so, but he's way stepped back in this season, right? Like, that whole Sam Riegel inappropriate jokes, gender jokes, jokes about species, jokes about physical intimacy, all the Sam Riegel, all Sam Riegel's, favorites are gone, right? Like, they're really, really stepped back, which is, and I'm kind of like, and so then you're like, well, wait, why, right? And here's why, right? I think, and get this, right? So we just came out, and the OGL 1.0 is forever, it's irrevocable, it's going to be unchanged, and the SRD is Creative Commons, right? Well, what did Critical Role do in this? Did they abandon Dungeons & Dragons at any of this? Absolutely not. Like, they know what side of their bread is buttered, right? Like, they know which side of their bread, where their bread is buttered, right? And they stayed right with Dungeons & Dragons, right? And so as they go into Season 2, they're like, oh my gosh, we made this an adult story, right? And we Deadpooled it, right? We could have made $2 billion, but instead we made it rated R, and we made $700 million. Right? Stupid move, right? And I will say, I wouldn't be surprised if later we actually see a recut of Season 1 to take more Riegelisms out, right? And make it accessible to Dungeons & Dragons' actual player set. And what is that, right? I know it, and you know it, right? Dungeons & Dragons player set starts at 12 years old, right? And the Dungeons & Dragons player base is middle school, high school, college age, and forever student, right? And actually, education's a big deal, right? Like, it's saying, hey, this starts at middle school, and so you don't want to put, so it's really problematic when, Season 1, Episode 1 had Scanlan in bed with somebody in literally Episode 1, right? And what was the point, right? A few, crass, fans got a giggle, and literally like 5 million parents were like, you can't watch this. Well, what was it worth the laugh? No, right? And so now that we move into Season 2, they're like, hey, the D&D player base starts at 12. Maybe we make content. So if we're making a Dungeons & Dragons, and in my opinion, my humble opinion, Critical Role just said, hey, we're making a Dungeons & Dragons show. Let's make it for everybody who plays Dungeons & Dragons, all the way down to age 12, right? And if you look at season 2, it looks like something that, all the way down to 12 could watch, right? Whereas season 1, not even remotely, because of the Riegelisms, right? So I'm thrilled about this. I'm thrilled that Critical Role is leaning into their D&D aspects in the show, and I'm thrilled that they're embracing that. They're living up to what they say, which is inclusivity, including down to middle school, right? Who are in the Dungeons and Dragons player base. All that, every word of that, is my humble opinion. But what's important is your humble opinion, which you're going to give me when you get in a comment. Send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing.